Hey everyone, with the Kraken having an extra day off, we thought we'd share a rather long portion of our Patreon exclusive podcast, The Red Glare, where we discuss all the non-Kraken playoff series around the NHL. If you're interested in hearing the full podcast or getting new episodes each week, check out the Patreon link in the description below or go to patreon.com/Emerald City Hockey. And now, on to the sneak peek. But now we can get into the playoffs, RJ. I guess we not gonna be talking about the Kraken series, so we got to talk about the other Western Conference series, RJ, because we got West is best, East is least. That's why it rhymes that way. Vegas Edmonton. One game has been played so far. It's been the Golden Knights versus Leon Draisaitl, RJ. Time to panic if you're Edmonton. Connor McDavid didn't score. What's wrong?
Well, I mean, there's definitely rumors that he's not playing at 100%. You saw the video, the practice video, of course, where it looked like that leg. He was kind of, flexed it out like it's not at full strength there. And I think maybe you are seeing some of the effects of it. I think, yeah, it's definitely panic time if you're Edmonton. I mean, they were lucky that it was, only a 2-goal difference in this game. I mean, Leon Draisaitl, best playoff player ever. I think you can certainly make the argument. We brought up the stat last time on Red Glare that he raises his game in the playoffs more than anybody in NHL history. And the numbers have only gotten just more ridiculous after that game. So yeah, 4 goals from him, pretty much single-handedly leading the team to being anywhere close in that game. I think Vegas outplayed the Oilers thoroughly. I mean, it wasn't as close as the score would indicate. But Draisaitl just kind of did his thing. Yeah, if I'm Edmonton, I'm worried about even winning a game in this series. Like, just not enough is going right for you. You're not defending well at all. You're letting Vegas players just kind of stand in front of the net, get tips, deflections, rebounds, all of that. Stuart Skinner isn't playing well. I mean, he really hasn't all playoffs. Like, he's looked just as shaky as he has all playoffs. And you clearly don't trust Jack Campbell behind him. I mean, if you're going to have bad goaltending, you're not going to win this series. Like, I think it's looking like Vegas in 5. I mean, it could be a really short series.
I don't understand the goaltending situation for Edmonton at all because Jack Campbell came in and played one game and had like 2.4 goals saved above expected in half a game or whatever. And they just in 51 minutes and they refused to put him back in. And I keep hearing from all these people that Stuart Skinner isn't the problem here. But I'm like, at some point when your goalie's got a 3.68 goals against average in the playoffs and his save percentage is 8.83, I think the goaltending might be a problem. Like, how large does the sample size need to get before people admit that, he might be a little shaky here in his first postseason? I think that's totally valid. I think I'm with you. Neither goaltender is going to get much help from this Edmonton defense. That's standard. We knew that. That's Edmonton. That's always going to be the case. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think Edmonton actually got that outplayed. I think the system of Vegas is good. They were able to attack in transition and take advantage of the poor Edmonton defense. But you know what? Vegas's defense looked really bad to me as well, RJ. They looked really bad defending in front of Brossoit. Like, really bad. I mean, I know you could say, oh, it's just Leon Draisaitl. What are you supposed to do? How about cover him net front or at the side of the net where he's just untouched and able to just pick up a puck? And if he wanted to, RJ, he could have put it on his stick and just loaded it right over Brossoit's shoulder like it's a pizza going into a pizza oven. Draisaitl had that much time on some of these goals, okay? I think Vegas, if they want to, be serious, like you could get away with this against Edmonton, but Vegas, their blue line looks really weird and wonky to me. It doesn't look like their blue line of regular.
Right. I mean, the defending wasn't like fantastic from them. I mean, some of the I'm looking at the shot chart here, and that goal from Draisaitl from behind the net. Like, what do what do you want them to do? But the ones where he was out, like kind of right out in front of the net for rebounds and whatnot. Like, yeah, I mean, you can do a better job covering him. It's so difficult, to keep track because how many of those goals were on the power play? Also, I know at least one was.
Oh, don't be trying to find excuses for the Vegas Gold Knights here, RJ. It's okay to just say that their D played bad. 2 of them were on the power play, by the way.
Okay, 2 on the power play. So like at even strength, I thought it wasn't terrible. I mean, that's just again my takeaway from like watching the game, and especially like through the first period where I think 3-2 Vegas after the first. Like, and Draisaitl gets that crazy behind off the back one, at the end of the period. But like, I thought Vegas could have easily been up 4-1 after that first period. I mean, they outplayed the Oilers so badly in the first.
I'm looking at things though. The other thing that worries me about the Vegas blue line is that they weren't involved in the transition at all. Like they weren't the ones moving the puck up. It was a lot of wingers or centermen coming back and helping out in the defensive zone to be able to turn things around on Edmonton. And again, when you have a blue line that has an Alex Pietrangelo, who's the only Vegas defenseman to pick up a point in this game in which they had 5 goals, or 6, I should say. I think that's worrisome when you have guys like Pietrangelo, you have guys like Theodore. I mean, you have people who can move the puck back there, and they did not look capable of moving the puck at all. I think that's another problem for Vegas.
Well, I mean, a lot of it they didn't really need to. Like, yeah, they didn't, kind of end up with points on that, but they were beating the Oilers in transition. You look at a lot of those goals; those were off transition rushes, and yeah, just because they're off of Oilers turnovers usually doesn't mean that that the defense can't move the puck. I mean, I think we did see this game a little differently. Like, and maybe I'm focusing more early in the game. You're focusing later in the game too, because I did have a hockey game of my own, so I had to stop watching like early in the third. And so, I mean, maybe we're just talking about different segments of the game here.
No,
But
I'm just saying
and
I
yeah.
saw a lot of like the plays that I would mark as like good plays defensively for Vegas and plays in which fed the transition going back the other way, which the Oilers have zero answer for and they're not going to have an answer. They were all stuff like Mark Stone coming back and taking a puck away, or Riley Smith or somebody from the forward group coming back and making a play, and then the Vegas Golden Knights being able to go to town. And usually you can see guys like an Alec Martinez get in there and do something like that. And instead, I just didn't even notice him. And I think that that's something that, is a potential problem for them. Again, it's not going to be a problem against the Oilers, but it's one of those things that this is why
Okay, well,
I don't feel like
all right.
Vegas
Well,
is
there
the
we go.
same
Yeah.
level of thing.
Okay, I think it could be a potential problem for them, just not against the Oilers. So yeah, I
Right,
mean,
that's
we're
all I
we're in
started off
agreement there.
saying. I just said that
Okay,
Vegas's blue
okay.
line
I
was
thought we were
really
just talking
bad.
about this series.
No, it's just all I
Okay.
started saying was that their blue line was really bad, and that's worrisome. I think that's it's going to be worrisome past this series. I just think at some point you need guys to step up. And look, I know Pietrangelo is hurt. I think that's kind of been like an open secret. I think Shea Theodore's probably hurt just because it's Shea Theodore, and he's always hurt if he plays more than 5 games in a row. So I'm sure that stuff is in there. But I think if this Vegas team was going up against, say, a Dallas or some of these teams in the East, like a Carolina, like they'd get destroyed if they're having to rely on their wingers coming back to force the puck out of their own zone. And I think that that's something they just to watch in this series, because at some point it is possible that McDavid figures that out and is able to exploit it for the time on ice he's out there. So for at least 25 minutes a night, RJ, Vegas might have a problem.
I don't know. Well, McDavid just hasn't looked entirely on to me. I think he is hurt, so we'll see if he's able to kind of get back to himself. He just doesn't have that same kind of game-breaking speed that we're used to.
Yeah, and Brassois, I haven't been sold on him either. That's the other thing with Vegas. If the blue line's going to
He
be
hasn't looked
bad,
great, no.
no, yeah, I think that's still a problem for them. Again, Skinner looks worse. The Edmonton blue line looks worse. So these are not like problems for this series, but I'm not seeing this juggernaut Vegas team or even the Vegas team from the regular season so far in this postseason. Like they struggled against Winnipeg and the forwards kind of had to bail them out in that series. And they're struggling again here against Edmonton and the forwards are going to bail them out. And it works because you're playing Winnipeg and you're playing Edmonton. But at some point, I don't know that the forwards bailing you out is going to be enough anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see who their opponents are going down the road. Yeah, I guess you kind of captured my feelings where it's just like, yeah, Vegas isn't playing their 100% best game, but the Oilers are just such a flawed team, it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. And there's not, I mean, I don't even know that there's anything I could say for Edmonton to change it. Like, just don't have Ken Holland build this roster over the last 4 years. That's how you fix this.
Right. I mean, defend better. I mean, like, here's the thing. I feel like Jay Woodcroft with the Oilers has just kind of embraced the whole chaos hockey of like, yeah, we're gonna
Yeah,
win or lose every game 6-4.
yeah.
And I mean, with that roster, like you could make an argument that that kind of suits you best just because you have guys who can be game breakers. But I do wonder what it would look like if you're, kind of trying to win games more, 3-2 rather than 6-5 or whatever it is. Because they're just not defending the net front. They're not making it difficult at all, for their opponents. And I mean, like it's against the Kings when you can just kind of control the puck and own the puck for long stretches of the game, and
Hmm.
then they just have to beat you in those few transition moments. It can kind of work, but against Vegas, you're not going to be able to just hold the puck all period. Like
Yeah.
they're going to get their share of possession and they can beat you. It's just not going to work against better teams.
What's crazy is this is a roster that could do so well with a structured system. Like the answer
Yeah.
is really this. Like this is what I would do if I'm the coach of the Oilers. This is how you beat Vegas in this series, and I think you could beat Vegas if you did all of this. You have Draisaitl with McDavid. You keep that line together. You let Draisaitl do whatever he wants in the offensive zone. McDavid hangs back in the offensive zone to help defend against the transition. If McDavid's hanging back, Vegas can't do what they want to do. That takes care of whenever McDavid's out there. You're fine there. Vegas isn't going to get a transition against you with McDavid there. They're just going to have to work through the neutral zone, which we know from Kraken games, Vegas can't do for whatever reason. They just have this mental block of being able to do that. I don't know why they have the personnel for it, but they can't. The other thing I do is I'm like triple shifting Matthias Ekholm, having him defend the blue line super super strong, and then I repeat this all the way down the roster. You've got Ryan Nugent Hopkins. I know he's been a power play beast this year, but he can also defend really well. When Nugent Hopkins' line is out there, he stays back in the offensive zone. He's there to help back with transition. He can do it. He can be a distributor from up top. He's perfectly capable of doing that. So there you go. You've got your two top lines. You've got ability to do that. Oh, by the way, you need a third line to do that. Nick Bukestad can do that 1,000%. But you just need them to play with structure. If you have them play with structure where you say, we're not going to let Vegas kill us in transition, we're going to let guys like Evander Kane, Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman on the wing be our offense, and all of you centermen who are all very good centers and can handle this responsibility, you're going to hang back and you're going to help out the D, and you're going to make sure that there's always three people back for this Edmonton Oilers team. You're fine. This series is completely different, and I think Edmonton could probably win it because I think the Edmonton wingers can handle the Vegas blue line right now, given the way that they're playing so shakily. But it would take that. It would take saying McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Bukestad, you guys are playing back, and they're just not going to do that. But if they did, RJ, they're winning the series.
Yeah, you look up and down the roster, they have the depth now. This is not like previous Oilers teams where you're looking at a whole bunch of scrubs aside from McDavid and Draisaitl. Like, down the lineup, you have guys who can kind of make sure that nothing bad happens, while you're waiting to get the stars back out there. But they just Woodcroft seems unwilling to do it. That's kind of to my point what I was getting at
Yeah.
with he just seems to kind of embrace the chaos hockey, and I don't think that's going to work out for him. I know they were able to live off of it last year in the playoffs and get to the third round, but like I think that's kind of an anomaly. And you had McDavid playing just absolutely out of his mind, like that you just don't have this year. I wonder too, like if they kind of bow out early in this round, if you have an early exit, like say losing 5 to Vegas, like do they reconsider that at all? Do they? I don't know.
I don't know. I think they seem pretty committed to Woodcroft for whatever reason. I'm with you. I didn't understand. Like I understood him coming in the 1 year after McClellan, but I don't
Yeah.
understand this overall commitment that they've had with him. This year in the NHL proved one thing above anything else, and that is the teams that have solid structures, the coaches who are coaching these teams who have solid structures for how the team is going to play, regardless of what personnel they have available to them, are all succeeding. You look at Boston, solid structure. Guys up and down the lineup, they all know what their job is. If somebody goes down, next man up, they can fill that spot. Nothing changes for the team. You look at, Vegas, same exact situation. You look at Dallas, same exact situation. These are all, even the Kraken, right? Like everybody knows what they're
Mm-hmm.
doing on this team. And if you have to go up from the fourth line to the second line, it's the same job that you're doing. And I think that that's a big deal. It allows people to come up from the AHL and fill those roles. And so this year, the big takeaway I had looking at the teams at the top of the standings, even teams like a New Jersey, it's all about they're committed to a certain style of play, and not just are they committed to something like chaos hockey like Edmonton, they're committed to a certain structure of this is how we forecheck, this is how we transition through the neutral zone, this is how we defend. And the teams that have done that are successful, and the teams that didn't this year are the ones that really struggled either in the regular season or they really struggled come playoff time, and we saw them kind of fall apart, like a Colorado, who just didn't have the personnel to have a structure and get anything done, and they struggled. Or a Minnesota, where they didn't really have a structure offensively and they struggled. Or even a Rangers that kind of lost their system and lost everything, and then they just couldn't score at all in the postseason. And so why a team like Edmonton, or really any of the teams around the NHL, aren't committed to finding a coach that's going to install a system and structure, I think that's the number one thing any team with a vacancy this offseason needs to be looking for.
Yeah, no, I well said there. I mean, you look at Jay Woodcroft. It's interesting too because he was the first, I think, like video coach who ended up becoming a head coach in the NHL. And like with that background, you'd think that you kind of have more of a structure, maybe that you'd have ways that you want a team to play. Like I know he's not just like, hey guys, just go out and play or whatever, but I think he's just kind of made this value judgment about what he has, and that maybe, hey, like chaos, like this is the way to go. We can play this way, and nobody else really can even get by playing this way. So maybe we should,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it just seems to be not working.
Yep. RJ, right now, I guess all their ears were burning because I'm getting a call from Scam Likely. So which NHL team do you think that is trying to bring me in to consult with them finding a coach?
Obviously, the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, yes.
They're just trying to get you. I mean, you just gave the entire blueprint for how the Oilers can win this series. Like
Yes.
if they do all this, this is how the Oilers can win the series. That's Ken Holland on the phone, Dylan. I would advise maybe don't pick up.
That's why it says Scam Likely.
Yeah.
It's good Holland. Yeah, I don't know. It's there. This roster is better than any of the other ones that Edmonton has had, and yet it just on ice looks worse, and that's crazy to me. But it's their own fault. I don't know. It's their own fault. Whatever. They committed to Cody Ceci. I said that would be a bad idea. I've never faltered from blaming it all on Cody Ceci, and I never will. The Eastern Conference, RJ. I just kind of talked about them. Let's start with the Carolina New Jersey series because it's all red, and my phone was lit up red for the Scam Likely. So that's my reasoning for this. It's really just because I want to talk about the Rangers for 1 second. What the hell, guys? What the hell? Come on. I was on board with you guys opening night. I said you're going to win the Stanley Cup, pick you in my bracket to go to the Cup final. And then what? You just forgot to play hockey? You forgot that Panarin and Zibanejad had over 90 points in the regular season, but they couldn't do anything in the postseason? You let a guy named after a Dragon Ball Z character just stonewall you in net? RJ, you're a Gerard Gallant guy. You always said he comes through in the postseason because he bugs those refs for power plays and whatever, and you always said that he's a good coach. I've had reservations. So, what happened? What happened to your boy?
He was able to bug the refs for power play. They just need to score on the power plays. Like he can't make that happen. The players have to step up and do that. And yeah, I mean the Rangers in a lot of ways kind of got goalie in this series, but they just have so much offensive firepower that they should have been immune to that. And I just don't know what happened as they, like, after the first two games. Like, did they get complacent? I mean, you would have expected it to be over in 6 if they just, completely lost it and got complacent. I felt like they'd kind of got back to their game at least a little bit. But no, apparently not, forcing a game 7, but apparently not, as they get shut out there. I don't know. It's a shame because I didn't have the chance to watch a ton of that series.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of always the one that I had to, like, either put on another game or be doing something else. So, like, I want to go back and kind of watch more of it, in the off season when I actually have some more time and kind of dissect what exactly happened there.
It was structure, RJ. It was a system and it was structure. Look, the Devils knew that they probably didn't have the blue line to compete against this Rangers forward group, right? And that's true. They didn't. I like the Devils blue line. I think it's going to get better in the coming years. They got a lot of great prospects coming through the pipeline. But they did what they had to do, which was, okay, look, we're not going to be able to slow them down. They're going to get a ton of shots off. All we have to do is just keep sight lines open for our goaltender and let him deal with it. And credit the defense, they did. Schmid never had to make lateral movements. He never had to go across crease to make a save. They just clogged up passing lanes and they said, shoot or go shoot. Try to snipe it past our goalie, pick a corner if you can. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that was exactly how they had to play this. Credit to Lindy Ruff. I was, a little worried about him going into the postseason, given, doesn't historically have a lot of postseason success. And I don't know that this is the answer for a long postseason run, but it was the answer to get out of that first round series against a team that had a ton of firepower up front, which was just make sure your goalie can see it, make sure they can't do anything special, they can't use the playmaking abilities that they have, and we'll take that away from them. And I think that's why you saw the specific Rangers that really struggled in this series were the guys that rely on playmaking to make it happen, whether it's one-time shots or them setting up other guys in spectacular fashion. But you look at a Panarin, who only had 2 assists in all 7 games, right? He's a fantastic playmaker from the wing, just wasn't allowed to make plays. You look at Zibanejad, fantastic playmaker, loves to work with like tic-tac-toe type goals. That's what I always think about with Mika Zibanejad. Wasn't able to do that in this series. Patrick Kane, largely unable to do that in this series. Tarasenko likes to get open, sneak behind a defense. They just weren't letting him. And so they took away all that stuff. The one guy who is just I'm just going to, shove it down your throats.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go at the net hard. Chris Kreider, 6 goals in 7 games. Because they were letting him. You know what I mean? New Jersey was just like, here's an open lane to our goaltender. Take it. That's fine. We're just not going to let you beat us any other way. And Chris Kreider was the only Ranger kind of capable of playing that style of game and going at it. And I think that's really what the Rangers' undoing was.
Yeah, I mean, you look down up and down the roster and you see kind of only one real like straight line take it to the net type of guy, in the top 6 who can do that. And it's interesting because like this is something that maybe could have been addressed at the trade deadline if you go a different way.
Yeah.
And that's where I think everyone's going to be looking back at, because the Rangers really went for it and loaded up the deadline with Tarasenko and Patrick Kane. And in hindsight, you could be like, okay, was that, is that kind of too redundant given the roster that you have? Or should you be looking to add kind of a different element, something more difficult to play against? Are you making the mistakes of like a Tampa Bay Lightning before they realized they needed to kind of bring in guys like a Blake Coleman, a Barclay Goodrow, all along there? I don't know. I mean, I believe we kind of praised the Rangers' moves at the deadline. Do you remember exactly what we were saying?
I think we were in favor of it. I was in favor of it. I won't speak for you. But I thought it was a good idea, and I still think it was a good idea. I think, they needed to do more to force the Devils out of that, and they just didn't. They just played into what the Devils wanted to have happen after those first 2 games, and they never found a way of dealing with it. And the bottom line is, I get it. Panarin likes to distribute. Zibanejad likes to be a playmaker. Tarasenko, Kane. Doesn't matter. They should have been able to adjust. Gallant should have been able to go to them and say, just take shots. You guys can also snipe it. Like, you all have good shots. Just go score a goal and force New Jersey to try something else. And they just never did. They just never made an adjustment. Through 7 games, they never seemed to adjust to it. And I think ultimately that's the problem rather than the personnel that they brought in.
Yeah, no, I think you got a good argument there. Like, I can't really defend Gallant after this series. Like for this series anyway. Right. I think he's done good things in the past, but like, yeah, it seems like he just kind of didn't adjust. And I mean, like, I think maybe he was too preoccupied too with making sure his team's kind of got the physical edge in the series and making sure you're not pushed around and all that stuff, and maybe feel like you could push the Devils around a little bit, that you're not really worried enough about generating offense the way you need to.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, you just kind of have to wake up.
Yeah, and it's nuts too because you wasted a fantastic playoff performance from Shesterkin. I mean, he almost
it wasn't even like normally you look at a series like this and you kind of point to goaltending, like, oh, their goaltending kind of fell apart, but that wasn't the case here.
No, I mean, he almost had identical numbers to the goaltending on the other side that everyone's praising and saying you got goalied by. 931 save percentage. Schmidt had 935. Like, it's almost the same, right? Goals saved above expected. Shesterkin is probably going to lead the playoffs for a while despite being eliminated.
8.8 through 7 games. I mean, nobody's else is even really close to that.
Right. So it's a dramatic failure for the Rangers, no matter how you slice it. And it's kind of nuts because there's already been rumblings about whether or not there might be a coaching change. Like, this series was so bad for them, and I think everybody's kind of pointing to the coaching, that there could be a coaching change there, which is, I mean, that I would not have thought that going in. Like, even if you told me they were going to lose in the first round, I would have thought, well, somebody got hurt or Shesterkin fell apart, but it wouldn't have been because the coaching was going to be so bad. Everybody was going to be like, you can't bring this guy back again. That's just not what I would have thought.
Gallant, going in the playoffs this year, like Gallant, if you'd kind of had me rank like which coaches were safest in their jobs, he would have been up near the top, like even, surviving a first round loss. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what they decide to do. I forget what his contract is. Like if they, I mean, they're the Rangers. They've got plenty of money. They don't need to worry about it. But still, um, I feel like that might be an overreaction to get rid of him, but there really was nothing else left that you can kind of point to and blame, for this series, except maybe the deadline acquisitions. But I still think the coaching thing's a better argument.
Yeah. All right. So now to talk about the actual series, RJ.
Oh
the
yeah,
Carolina Devils series, because they're the teams that are still playing. Carolina's got this. Look at how the Devils, we just talked about how the Devils kind of got through that. It was maybe because of the coaching and not making adjustments to deal with them. Carolina's got a coach that's going to make adjustments all day long. It's a team that plays with a structure that is very malleable, and he can change it around. So they can have the blue line lead the way. They can have their forward group lead the way. They can goaltend you. They can do whatever they want to do. They just kind of do everything above average, but maybe nothing spectacularly great. That's kind of the Carolina Hurricanes, in my opinion. And game one very much looked like that. Carolina just kind of handling this younger, more inexperienced team.
Yeah, and their forecheck, especially early, was all over the Devils. I mean, that start for Carolina where you go up 3-0, the Devils only have one shot on goal, and just the Devils couldn't find a way to get the puck out of their zone. It felt like, and the Canes just kept coming in waves. It was kind of that cycle of just defend, clear, defend for the Devils, and they just felt completely in control. So I mean, I expect to see a bit of pushback from New Jersey. I don't think it's going to be that dominant all series. But also when, you chase Schmidt, who, did a lot to win that series against the Rangers, that's a big dent in his confidence, I would think, although not entirely his fault, just because his team was getting caved in. But it wouldn't surprise me, to see this be a longer series than like the 4 or 5 it looked like it was going to be after game one. I think you'll see a response from New Jersey, but man, they just look like they could not hang at all in game one.
No, and it's, they need to find a way of scoring, getting some of their bigger players on the board. I mean, Timo Meier being hurt certainly doesn't help with that. But Timo Meier somehow went all 7 games in the first round without scoring either, RJ. Not even a point. Just they can't pick up an assist. It's kind of remarkable that this Devils team was able to advance, getting the offensive output from their star players that they did. Big credit to John Marino. I think he was MVP for the Devils in round 1. Perfect defenseman come playoff time to play a system like that, RJ, where you just give an open lane to the net. John Marino's your guy. Like he's fantastic at that. So good credit to him. And I know that sounds sarcastic and bad, but I'm actually like being absolutely serious. Like, the system they needed to run against the Rangers, he was the perfect guy. He's the worst case scenario now against the Carolina Hurricanes. He's just gonna get eaten alive. Yeah, I don't know.
How about Nathan Bastian running the offense for New Jersey, though, scoring the only goal, former Kraken?
Yep. good for him. But again, if that's
Tell
what
me
you
you can't rely on him all series to score all your goals?
I'm telling you can't rely on him all series to score your goals. I think Jack Hughes, this is your time. Heischer's not going to step off offensively because he's too busy being, a defensive god down the middle right now. So you can't rely on him for the offense. This is Jack Hughes and those guys, Bratt. It's their time to step up. And if they're not going to step up, this series will be 4 or 5 games, and it will be pretty quick, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need to step up. I mean, the other thing that that worries me for New Jersey, if you're looking on the other side at Carolina, is like Sebastian Aho. We know how good he is,
Mm-hmm.
but I think he's really poised to make a statement here in this year's playoffs. I think because he's in Carolina, because they've got all those players. They basically they contribute as a team, like you said. Like they're not super flashy. Any one guy taking over a lot of the time, but they do everything pretty well. Like Sebastian Aho, I think is going to work to make a name for himself in this year's playoffs and like get more recognition. I think he deserves more recognition, but man, in the Islanders series and then again in game 1, I mean, he was just, all over everything.
Yeah, he really was. It feels like this is the year where Sebastian Aho wants people to consider him a superstar. You know what I mean?
That's what I was getting at. You phrased that a lot better than what I was. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
It very much feels like that is the case, and he's going to make the most of this postseason run to make that case for himself. I think this is a guy who, look, he signed the big contract in a very flashy way, we'll say. And I think he wanted that kind of attention there for people to know who he is. He's in a non-traditional hockey market in Carolina there. And I think, during the regular season, he put up the 36 goals. I think, he's trying there. And this postseason run is probably going to be the time, especially if Carolina handles the Devils here, because there's been a lot of eyes on this Devils team. You talk about that Rangers-Devils series. That was the #1 most watched playoff round 1 series, at least in the U.S. We don't know Canadian numbers. I'm sure Toronto probably had something there. But as far as everything goes, and it wasn't particularly close. Like, a lot of people were watching that Devils team. They saw what they did against the Rangers. So if Sebastian Aho can kind of tear them apart, that would be a nice way to get a lot of more casual hockey fans to really know who you are and think of you in that elite company. So Sebastian Aho's, that if that is his aim, he's picking the right time to do it.
Yeah, and I'm looking at also just this is crazy by expected goals percentage here, just forward lines. The top with Carolina, Aho centering Mackenzie McEachran and Seth Jarvis. Like you look at who his wingers are too.
Yeah.
Like he's carrying the mailman, and the other line that he's on with Jarvis and Stefan Nason.
Oh my gosh!
Like, yes. I mean,
That's...
like this is great what he's been able to do in here, and then like with Teravainen before he went down, he's with Jarvis and Teravainen. But again, these aren't superstars that he's playing with. Yeah. Like he is carrying these lines and making his line mates look really good.
Yeah. Again, Kraken, trade Shane Wright for him right now. 1-for-1. Let's do it.
I mean, I would do it.
I know. It's all right. They're going to be able to sign him in free agency, and we'll just have all the centers. That's all you need. Just centers.
Yeah, just centers and Adam Larson.
We're going to have 12 lines just consisting of 1 center each. It's the new Dave Hackstall system.
Hey, no other team can roll 12 lines like we can.
Exactly. All right, going to the last the other Eastern Conference playoff series, RJ here, the last playoff series. Boy, I knew the Toronto fans were being ridiculous when they were shouting after they won their series, "We want Florida." And I thought they were being ridiculous for a couple reasons. One, I don't think they were respecting Florida and how good Matthew Tkachuk by himself is. That's really what it was. They were disrespecting him. And you don't ever disrespect him. That only makes his power greater. You'd think people would learn that by now. But two, if you're Toronto, Boston is the team that's going to a Game 7 against the second wildcard team. They're the team blowing it. They're the team with blood in the water. They're the one bleeding in the water. You want that team. Also, it'll allow you to truly vanquish your playoff demons against the Boston Bruins. But instead, Toronto fans got their wish. They got the Florida Panthers. And, that victory of winning in the playoffs, RJ, it's going to be very short-lived because this Florida team is rolling.
They are. And I know before the playoffs, you were saying, hey, Florida fans, just, enjoy the 4 playoff games you're going to get. Enjoy the 2 ones at home that you're going to get. But this Panthers team is good.
Mhm.
And I thought they'd give the Bruins a challenge. I still picked Boston in 6 because I'm like, well, it's the best regular season team of all time. But the Panthers got it done. And it was really fun watching the end
Yep.
of that game 7 at Queen Anne Beer Hall too. It was a very, I would say pro Florida, but probably just anti-Boston crowd.
Yeah.
Everyone was going nuts when the Panthers won that series. I mean, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, and yes, you say Matthew Tkachuk by himself. Matthew Tkachuk is amazing. I will give you that. But I think you're selling the rest of the team short just a little bit. I mean, first of all, you
No.
forgot your boy Brandon Montour.
Yeah, no, I'm not. And look, I'll be honest with me, picking Boston to kind of get rid of them. I may have been letting bias from last year get in when I picked the Panthers to win the Stanley Cup
You did
final in
say
our
that team
bracket
is dead
challenge.
to me.
And I
Yeah.
said that team is dead to me. So I couldn't give them credit. But the bottom line is Brandon Montour is a beast right now. He's playing like a completely different player. Like this is, and I know I'm not alone in this because I happened to be listening to 32 Thoughts yesterday, and Merrick and Elliot Friedman said the same thing. But this is not the same Brandon Montour that has played in the NHL the last 6-7 years. It's a completely different player, but this player is phenomenal. This guy, if he keeps it up all next season, should win a Norris. Like what he is doing is ludicrous. The amount of goals he is scoring, RJ, here in the postseason is nuts. I don't even know how else to say it, but 6 goals in 9 games now so far, point per game. He's defending well. He's the answer for anything they need on offense. And this team, especially, you look at guys like Kachuk, who can screen a goalie, Barkov, who can then focus on defense and kind of take that off Montour's plate. But Carter Verhaeghe makes a living just finding loose rebounds and living around the net there for loose stuff. I think Sam Reinhart can produce from that spot as well. Eric Stahl can produce that way. Like this team is built to have somebody just take shots from the point and find a way to get the puck to the net, and that's what Brandon Montour is doing right now, and it's making the whole system and structure work for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, they've just unleashed Brandon Montour, and I love to see it. I mean, the way that he's playing in the offensive zone and basically what he's free to do. I think most teams within their structure, they would not let Brandon Montour do what he wants to do
No.
here and what he's been doing. But it's all part of the system. Like you take that into account. You're like, hey, Brandon, go do whatever you want in the offensive zone. Go wherever you think you need to be. Be a rover. We'll have somebody cover for you. And you're seeing the positive results of it. And at this Panthers team, I mean, you look at the lineup, like they're just as deep on paper as they were last season when they were one of the top teams in the league. The difference is just they're playing a more playoff type sustainable way. And yeah, it's not going to result in the same, world beating stats during the regular season, but come playoff time, that depth is going to show itself and everyone's going to be playing solid defensively as well. And it's all kind of coming together in the way that I thought, maybe hoped it would, under Paul Maurice. And I mean, let's see, what else was I going to say? I was going to talk about the depth because I'm just seeing, is there anything we want to get to before Paul Maurice? Because like he's becoming my favorite coach in the league right now.
No, because the bottom line is what changed from the Florida Panthers from last year to this year? It's 2 things. It's Matthew Tkachuk coming in for Huberdeau, and it's Paul Maurice coming in to coach this team. That's it.
Yep.
And I would argue Paul Maurice probably, as much as I love Matthew Tkachuk, I would want him to win the Hart Trophy even over McDavid because it's boring to just give it to McDavid every year. Bottom line is Paul Maurice, I think, arguably made a bigger impact on this team just because of the system he's installed and the overall juice he's just given it with his personality.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole point of making a coaching change there, like, yes, you could have given, Andrew Brunette another year, but the way that they were playing, it was clear that they just weren't going to get far in the playoffs. They didn't know how to play in the playoffs. And Brunette just seemed unwilling to kind of make those changes. They were going to try and get by winning those 6-5 games, playing chaos hockey, looking like we were talking about the Edmonton Oilers looking. And hey, credit to the Panthers management for realizing that wasn't going to work. And Paul Maurice knew the mandate. And he's just been so fun also. I mean, whether it's the pressers afterward with, Tkachuk, a bleeping gamer,
Yep.
or, on the bench. Like, did you see that early in the series, like where he's got the the 5-1 on his chest. Did you see that?
Yes.
That is how you work the refs for calls. Forget Gerard Gallant. Gerard Gallant is dead to me now. Paul Maurice is my new best friend.
Rangers Stanley Cup next year confirmed.
Yeah, I guess so. But I love everything you're seeing from Paul Maurice, because he is embodying that spirit of there's no pressure on us.
Yep.
We're just going to go in and play the way that we play, and we're going to surprise some people. Like, not once has he ever looked bothered or intimidated by the level of their opponent,
Nope.
or kind of the situation they're in. Like, I think we respect it extra too, because we're seeing the Kraken on the other side of the playoff bracket doing a similar thing, where, I mean, Dave Haxtell certainly has a different style about him, but like the whole team's like, yeah, there's no pressure on us. There never has been. Like, we're, everyone picked us to lose. We're just going to go in here and do our thing. Pressure's all on the other side of the ice. And I think Maurice knows that, and he's playing it up.
Yep, and I can't help but wonder, RJ, because I remember doing Red Glare last year with the kind of surprise announcement that he was stepping down from the coaching job in Winnipeg, right? And here's somebody leaving a 500 team, and it was very much like, look, this guy has coached in the NHL from the age of 29, and he was in his mid-50s, and it was just, is he just burned out? Does he just not want to do this anymore? Has it all just been too much? And I think what happened was, one, people in hockey just can't stay away. I'm an example of that myself.
Oh yeah.
And two, I think he looked at this Florida spot and he said, all right, I'll do it, but I'm going to do it just without a care in the world. Like, if I come back to do this, I'm just going to do it to have fun and not worry about anything and not care. And I'm just going to go with it. No, you know what I mean? Like, this is the kind of guy, he reminds me of somebody who like went through like a midlife crisis and came out the other side just like loose and free. And you know what I mean? And like, that's basically what happened here. He went from having all that pressure of being in the Canadian market in Winnipeg and all of their, lack of playoff success and all that weight on his shoulders. And he was just like, forget it. I'm retiring to Florida and I'm just going to live happy. And I'm going to, drink Mai Tais on the beach. And that's basically how he's coaching now. He's like a completely different person. The whole aura around him is different. And I'm very happy for him, because the bottom line is it looks like he's having fun. Everybody deserves to look like they have fun in their job. And that's what he's doing now. So congrats to Paul Maurice. And it's totally working. The system they're running, where they're letting Brandon Montour, who we already talked about, but also this year, Gustav Forsling, kind of doing the same thing Brandon Montour is doing on the second pairing, helping provide offense from the point, just sending pucks on net, letting their wingers get to it. That's part of the system. And then, like I said, having Barkov, Reinhart, Sam Bennett as another center on your team who can play back and work on things defensively to free up your defensemen to be offensively minded. The system works perfectly for this roster. And really, this is the exact system that Edmonton should be playing. Their centers should be playing back. They're still good offensive pieces. They can contribute from up high in the offensive zone, just like these guys are. But at the same time, you got a Darnell Nurse, you got a Bouchard, you got all that stuff. Let them work offensively with your wingers and make something happen, but make sure that nothing bad is going to kill you going back the other way. What Florida is doing right now is exactly what Edmonton needs to be doing.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, we kind of drew the Florida last season Edmonton parallels, and I think like there's that path forward for the Oilers. I think they'd be wise to take a look at the Florida Panthers, and yes, it may mean a step back in the regular season. I think that's what scares away a lot of teams, is that you're looking at, oh man, we're not gonna, we might not win the division or be like 2 points short of it like Edmonton was, and we might even be kind of fighting for a playoff spot late like the Panthers. It was a very close run to the end there. They almost didn't make it. But if you do, then you're playing the right way once you get there. And like, look, let's face it, seeding means nothing in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like this year drove it home, more than it, as much as any other year, certainly, maybe more. As long as you're in the top 8, it doesn't matter. It just does not matter. Seeding gets you nothing. So you might as well just play the right way once you get in there.
Yep. No, I know. I have a very important point to make, but first I'm actually taking a picture of Afra.
I see you
next to me.
Okay, I see you pulling your phone out and taking a picture.
I have the window open behind me. She's not happy with all the light coming into the room because she is not a morning person. She wants to still be sleeping, and she literally is twisting her ear like sideways on her head so that her ear is providing shade over her eyeball so that she can sleep without the light on her face. and so I had to take a picture. I'll tweet it out later. Um, the thing that I want to talk about with this Florida team, just to drive home, the system and structure that they had. RJ, Brandon Montour, 16 regular season goals. Aaron Ekblad, 14 regular season goals. Gustav Forsling, 13 regular season goals. When was the last time you saw defensemen on a team, 3 of them add up to over 40 goals of offense?
I can't remember a time. I mean,
I don't know, Paul
I,
Coffey
I
by
I
himself in
could.
the 80s probably, but like
Right,
like,
right.
yeah, it's crazy, right? Like that's not how teams play in today's NHL, but it's how this roster was constructed, and credit to Paul Maurice for seeing that and for making it work. But that's that right there. I mean, that's an incredible stat. I don't know how nobody's talked about that. They had 3 defensemen
Right.
give them 43 goals this year. That's remarkable.
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody talk about that actually.
I know. I just noticed it. I mean, like I knew it all year. Like you watch the Panthers play, you
Did
notice
Erik
how
Karlsson steal
active
all
they
the
are.
defensemen doing offensive things shine with like the best offensive season by a defenseman probably since Bobby Orr? Like, is that what it is? I don't know.
Wow, that was a healthy amount of Carlson needs the Norris.
I didn't say that.
he,
I
he
didn't
just
say that.
he just like let me just casually mention that it's the best offensive season we've ever seen from a defenseman in like 50 years. Real quicker, okay.
Is it not?
I don't know. It's ludicrously
The
impressive.
I
It
mean, the Norris,
probably
as
is.
much as you could argue that it probably is just vote on, based on offensive output, like that shouldn't equate to Norris, just that he had the best offensive season, in a long, long
Yeah,
time.
yeah, it
But
is.
we're talking about defensemen generating
Yeah,
offense, and I
yeah,
think that might have
yeah.
stolen some of the shine from what the Panthers are
Yeah,
doing.
I think it did somewhat. I still think just nobody wanted to talk about this Panthers team all regular season is also part of it. I think
They were so just ignored and slept on because I think they were dead to a lot of people like they were to you. I think
yep,
everyone felt like they kind of had this fool's gold team from last year. Oh, and look, they're a whole lot worse in the regular season this year. They're falling off. Last year was an anomaly. I think they didn't see what the whole idea was behind bringing in Paul Maurice. I know a lot of Panthers fans were. I remember when the Panthers played the Kraken too, and I posted that video of Maurice just like chewing out his players halfway through that game when they weren't giving effort. Panthers fans like, oh man, like he's already lost them. This is
yeah.
bad. They were on top of that. I think everyone just kind of felt like, oh, that team last year was fake.
You want a quote that could leave this podcast and then be applied to any aspect of life ever, RJ?
Sure, why not?
There's nothing more dangerous than a middle-aged man with nothing to lose going to Florida. That's what happened with Paul Maurice here. That's
You're gonna take one thing from this podcast. Let that be it.
Yep, there's nothing more dangerous. Yeah, the last thing I want to mention with Florida, and then I guess we can briefly touch on Toronto because I guess they're also involved in all this. Is they're doing all this? I can't imagine how much better this team would also be with Patrick Hornquist, if he was in the lineup.
Oh, can you imagine?
Just tipping pucks from those guys, cleaning up stuff net front. I still feel awful about all that. He's been out since December 4th with a concussion. I hope he's able to get healthy and maybe come back. But I mean, he deserved to be on this legendary run that this Panthers group is putting together. So I had to mention him, RJ. You know what a big fan of Horny I am.
Yes, I'm well aware, and you know what? Like I agree with you there. It's a shame with the concussion and everything that he's had to deal with that. But and the thing is too, he's still been. I'm looking back at the email I got for the Masterton Trophy ballot thing and the write up on Hornquist because the Panthers say he will not play again this season, but there he is every time the Panthers hit the ice. He's been practicing with them, like basically turning into a coach mid-season. He's still been a very big part of the team. I mean, and that's one thing I noticed too when the Panthers came to town last season, where there was like I think 3 guys that stayed like way late after practice that were just on the ice for longer than even with the scratches usually. And it was like I think it was one of the scratches. It was Joe Thornton, who just loves the game
Yep.
more than anything else, like legend, and Patrick Hornquist. Like those were the last 2 guys out on the ice for the Panthers. The scratches had already left the ice. The rookies had already left the ice. It was Joe Thornton and Patrick Hornquist, the last ones out there.
Yeah.
Just love of the game is absolutely there. Feel bad for him that he can't be playing along with this group, because he'd be making a big impact too. Like,
Hmm.
he plays playoff style hockey.
Yeah. No, Patrick Hornquist as like becoming a coach wouldn't surprise me. I think becoming a head coach would surprise me. I don't know that he's that kind of guy, but as like a skills coach, he'd be incredible.
Oh yeah,
He'd be incredible.
yeah. Sign me up.
I would totally want him as part of my organization, or just as a floating coach during practices, just pointing things out, teaching guys things. Like, he'd be so perfect for that. Yeah. So just again, just wanted to mention him because he hasn't been playing with this team for a while, but boy, does he deserve to be. Um, Toronto, RJ. Uh, uh,
Well said. I think yeah, captured it perfectly. I think, yeah, they're not playing against kind of a tired and worn out Tampa team. You're playing against a Florida team with a lot more energy, and I think they're just struggling to break through. Their top guys are having difficulty. I think, you look at a moment that sticks out to me from the last game too is Austin Matthews taking that penalty with like 1 second to go, in the second
yeah.
period there. Just things like that are frustrating to like deal with. A Matthew Tkachuk coming in, like this Panthers team doesn't go away, and you've still got to find a way mentally to deal with that. I think the Leafs, even though they did slay the first round demon, they got past Tampa, the pressure's still all on them, and you can see it in the way that they play. I think losing Matthew Nyes last game was really difficult.
Yes.
I think we talked about the boost that he gave them, the youth, the energy that bringing in a new player, what that'll
Mm-hmm.
do for you. And I thought he's played pretty well too, but losing him, especially in the fashion you lose him with that kind of, dirty behind the play stuff that I think I got the email for recently that resulted in a fine. Because that's, where we're at with the
Yay,
Department of Player Safety here.
Safety. They have a job to do, and they once in a while choose to do it.
Yeah, so Matthew Nyes is now totally fine because of the fine. So good on them. But anyway, like, I think that hurts, but that's not the only reason you're down 2-0 in the series. I just think,
Mm-mm.
a lot of kind of demoralizing stuff for them. I think Ilya Samsonov, this is a big problem. Like, this is my
Yes.
number one cause for worry if I'm Toronto, because he's clearly fighting an injury. He is playing through something where he's not at 100%. And I mean, when your goalie is noticeably fighting through an injury, it's really tough to succeed in the playoffs. Like, the other team knows it. They're going to pepper him with shots. They're going to bump him a little bit. And there's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, is Matt Murray healthy? Is he ready to go?
I have no idea. I would think that we would
Even
have
if he
seen him
is,
if
to
he
throw
was.
him into this spot,
I
like,
know it's a
do you
pretty
want to
rough
do
spot.
that?
I don't know. The bottom line, though, is that their blue line in front of whatever goaltender they have looks awful in this series. They have no answer to deal with, Kachuk or really any of the wingers and what they're doing in this. Like, they don't have an answer at all. Like, the blue line wasn't great to begin with. I think this series is proving more so that really Toronto's success in winning that first round series was more so on Tampa being just that beat up, that tired, having played that much hockey, more so than Toronto really finally being there and having the roster that can really do it, and they can go and they can slay all the dragons they need to have all the success, because this series is showing all the deficiencies in this roster, and the number one deficiency is depth on the blue line.
Mm-hmm. And with Toronto, I also want to kind of revisit, like, the roster construction, maybe a little bit of the trade deadline stuff, the decision to
Yep.
use a pick to bring in like a Luke Shen, who probably isn't helping you a whole lot. Defensively, he brings that physical aspect.
Yep.
As much as, again, I like Mark Giordano from his time playing here, like, he's great, classiest guy you can imagine. I think he hasn't looked all that great recently there. I think
No.
he's just in too big of a role for kind of where he's at in his career right now.
I know plus minus isn't all that. All right. I do. But you look at the worst performing players plus minus wise for this team. Jake McCabe at -6, and then Giordano and Justin Hall -7. All those guys play a lot of minutes. They play a lot of minutes for your team. And when this is a roster that, they got a lot of scoring, they scored a lot through the first round. This is only two games against this Florida team that are taken into account there. But I just think the depth for their blue line has been really, really poor. Otherwise, I mean, look, they focused on bringing in guys like Ryan O'Reilly. That was absolutely the right call. He's played fantastically
Yep.
for you. The depth on offense is there. Bringing in Matthew Nyes, all that stuff, it's worked. Nola Chari coming through for you. But the bottom line is, TJ Brody looks like a completely different person than he did 4 years ago. In that he went from being one of the most underrated defensemen to he looks like a liability. Just full out.
Yeah,
That's
flat
just
out.
what he is. TJ Brody and Vlasic, RJ, kind of similar careers. It went from being like underrated, under talked about. Arguably, these are like top 10 defensemen, but nobody notices it, to now just being like, why are they in the NHL?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of crazy.
Well, at least Brody doesn't have. Actually, I don't know what his contract looks like, but I can't imagine it's as bad as Vlasic's going forward.
Probably not. Yeah, no, probably not. So that's a problem that the Leafs are going to have to figure out a way of dealing with. I have no idea how they're going to in the offseason, given their cap situation. No idea if they're going to have their general manager either, RJ. Because, Kyle Dubas, it kind of felt like his job relied on winning in that first round. They won in the first round, but boy, this looks like it could be a sweep. If Toronto gets swept in the second round, I don't know that his job is that safe. Not to mention, I think his contract's up anyway. He can probably go somewhere else and get a big deal. But still, I mean, the roster all of a sudden doesn't look nearly as good as it did 5 days ago.
Right. And I think if they get swept, if it, only goes, if they lose in 5 or something like that, I think we could just see a mutual parting of ways with the contract being up. I think Dubas believes in himself. I think he thinks he can go and find some job that, maybe a little bit better of a situation where he's going to have plenty of autonomy and kind of build another roster the way he wants to do it. And I think there would be teams out there that potentially be interested in that. I mean, the Leafs had a lot of regular season success, and they got past the first round. I think that helps his case a lot.
Yeah.
But overall, still, you look at the roster, and I don't know. There's some questions about kind of how it was built. The O'Reilly trade looks amazing. I mean, like he is just. It feels like he's single handedly just trying to drag this team as far as it can go. Like he's like the number one guy that I notice with this Leafs team, just doing a lot of the positive things, and especially in games where it's not going well. He seems like he has his best games too, when the rest of the team kind of needs that little pick me up from him. But I just don't think it's going to be enough necessarily. If anybody else doesn't show up, it's not going to be enough. No. So I think Dubas is, if they don't win the series, I'm sure he's probably gone. Sheldon Keefe, I mean, if Dubas is gone, Keefe is gone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would be very surprised if they kept him without Dubas around. It's interesting, too, because you bring up the O'Reilly trade. Obviously, this is what O'Reilly does come playoff time. Like, this is why we wanted him with the Kraken and everything, right? That sounds like the only
Could you imagine, though? Because, like, look,
I know.
Look, at the deadline, there's like, I stand by Ron Francis's call, like, especially because it would have cost a first-round pick and more to get O'Reilly. Yeah. Like, not worth it in the long run. I totally get it. But I think if you had the full benefit of hindsight and you knew the Kraken were going to get to round 2, could you imagine this team with Ryan O'Reilly on it, too, solving the face-off problems, bringing the secondary scoring he's bringing? I mean, I'm like picking them to go to the conference final and maybe be a favorite at that point.
It would be insane. Him on that Wenberg line would be nuts.
Oh,
because that's where he would go. It'd be crazy. Yeah. Or on Maddie's wing, maybe even to take faceoffs for Maddie. Maybe you just move Maddie to the wing on that. Like, oh my gosh, we could talk for hours about it. The thing is, it sounds like that was the only trade where Kyle Dubas was able to actually just do what he wanted to do. Like, because in Toronto, he does not have final say. There's a lot of people that have input. I think he deserves to go to a place where he can have final say. He can be the decision maker, kind of do the job that he's actually hired to do, which is make the decisions. I think he deserves to have that. And I think if he goes to a place, and I was going to bring up the Kraken anyway before we talked to Ryan O'Reilly, if he goes to a place like the Kraken where they're willing to invest in an analytics department and really put the people around him that he wants to have around him, I would be fascinated to see what kind of job he actually does. Because I could see him maybe being a guy who could put together a roster that never looks all that great but seems to overperform with what they do. Maybe they never win a Stanley Cup or anything, but I think that he would be that kind of guy who could make all the right acquisitions and depth moves. It would just be a matter of if he was ever able to get the right superstars.
and
So
make the right coaching call, because
exactly.
I think he got it wrong this time.
I agree with that. You, everybody knows I agree with that. So that'll be a fascinating situation. Toronto is always going to be Toronto. It's always going to be a weird one. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this one, where I just think the blue line is not good enough to get out of this series. I mean, this is the one series, RJ, that I'm just like, if you told me it was going to be a sweep, I wouldn't bat an eye. I'd be like, yeah,
Yeah, I could see it going that way, but if the Leafs win Game 3, I think you're in for a longer series. Like
yeah,
this one more than anything feels like it just goes on confidence, momentum, and the Panthers have it all right now. But
yeah,
if the Leafs can do something to take it back, I think they have the talent certainly to make it a longer series.
right.